What lives inside your food? How do you feel when you see a rotten tomato or a moldy orange in your kitchen? Most of you would throw it away because it's already spoiled and it may be harmful to consume. But surprisingly, most of spoiled food are not extremely dangerous, said by Dr. Amanda Deering, clinical professor from Department of Food Science, Purdue University.
Have, say, a rotten cucumber, whatever. Is well, does that mean that it's that pathogens are in there? And that's what I always tell people. Actually, probably pathogens won't be there because the spoilage bacteria outcompete.
So you mean
other.
like the food spoilage may not contain the pathogenic
Exactly.
bacteria, right?
You may not want to eat it because it doesn't taste so great, but safety-wise, it's probably safer than other things.
Wow.
Because the spoilage bacteria can just outcompete the pathogenic bacteria.
And these microbes are normally found in the foods and fresh produce, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. There's tons of bacteria just associated with fresh produce, just naturally. You know, it's like that thing we do at Springfest, where we have kids, they get to plate a spinach leaf, and they see all the different bacteria and yeast, mold sometimes as well, that are able to grow on it. And people always ask me what I did to that to make it, and I said, no, I just bought it from Payless, right? I didn't do anything. That's just naturally there. It's not anything I put there.
We are talking about microorganisms, or microbes, or germs, depending on how we call it. You cannot see those using naked eyes, except looking under a microscope. In another word, a super powerful magnifying glass. The microbes can be found everywhere surrounding us. This includes in food, soil, water, air, plants, animals, and us. According to a recent study published in the scientific journal Nature, our human body consists of at least 30 trillion microbes, which is an equal amount of the total cell numbers in our body. Of course, most of them are not harmful to us, likewise the ones we found in the spoiled food. But we don't eat because the food looks not good or tastes not delicious. Also, we tend to have a negative perception of the things we cannot see with our naked eyes.
I think we have a natural bias against things we can't see, first off. So what we call the charismatic or multi-celled macroorganisms, we tend to view more positively than the things we can't see. And I think that's just natural human nature. And then we also have a tendency, which might also be human nature, but it's to emphasize the negative aspects of things, maybe not so much the positive. So normally, we have a tendency to associate microbes with disease, and specifically with diseases of humans. Sometimes animals and plants, but as disease-causing organisms, and they are the organisms that cause disease, but it's a small percentage of the total number of organisms that actually have this sort of disease negative impact. The vast majority of these, provide these essential ecosystem services or symbiotic associations that without which this macro life probably would not be possible.
Said Dr. Kathy Ng, a mycology professor from Department of Botany and Plant Pathology, Purdue University. Actually, many microbes are very useful for us. Some of gut microbes help us from digestion, vitamin production, and prevents us from the invasion of the bad ones. Many of them are also essentially needed for food industry. For example, the baking yeast Saccharomyces cerevisiae is one of the most common microbes residing in fruits that has been used for bread, beer, and wine production for more than 2,000 years.
Some of the earliest agriculture, we have evidence of things like beer drinking being important in early Egyptian cultures. We have evidence molecularly from some of the strains of yeast that are used in beer and bread, that they were probably domesticated around the same time that we were domesticating grains, that those two things probably went hand in hand.
Another example is cheese, which bacteria secretes an enzyme to make milk protein precipitated, solid, and chewable. Types of bacteria and molds play a crucial role for taste, scent, and ornamentation for each unique type of cheese. Yogurt, sauerkraut, vinegar, soy sauce, tofu, and other fermented food are also products from microbes. Human has been utilizing microbes in food industry by selecting microbes that have traits of interest to fulfill customers' need. This term is widely known as domestication. The closest parable would be how our breeding cats and dogs came from. Listen to the explanation by Dr. Peter Goldsberg from Department of Botany and Plant Pathology, Purdue University.
It's a wonderful example. So, I mean, you think about what is a dog? A dog is a domesticated wolf.
Yeah.
Okay, and through the course of thousands of generations, we've gone from something that'll bite your hand off if you get close to it, to something that we love. Some people love and have in their house and wouldn't go without, and so all of those sorts of things. It's very interesting because there's a geneticist in Russia who is domesticating foxes.
Yeah.
So he's taken wild foxes, and in maybe less than 10 generations, he's gone from something that is wild to something to fox strains, varieties that are pretty much domesticated, they're not fearful, they'll come up to you, they won't bite your hand off. They are really pets rather than being wild foxes. So that's a wonderful example of genetic modification.
In reality, this is a part of genetic modification made by human. But somehow the term GMO, or genetically modified organism, is misleadingly used by some activist groups.
The simplest answer that I can give is that if you go to scientific organizations in this country, like the National Academy of Sciences, the AAAS, the American Medical Association, all of these organizations have said that these things are safe. There's no reason to be concerned. And if you look at other countries as well, exactly the same thing has happened. These scientific and medical organizations say these things are safe. So the overwhelming evidence is that there are no reasons to be concerned about the safety of these GMOs. Now, that doesn't mean that you couldn't make something that's potentially dangerous, but the things that are on the market now are perfectly safe.
Similarly with Dr. Deering, saying that genetic modification is not that scary.
Right, because it's out there. Right?
Yeah.
You have all these anti-GMO groups that are
Right.
saying, we can't, GMOs are bad. I've even read things where they say you're eating DNA from other animals. And the thing is, we need GMOs.
Right.
We're not going to be able to produce as much food as we need to feed the world without GMOs. I think that's clear cut.
Right.
We know that. So when people ask me about that topic, I just say, well, so who's not going to eat? Because that's going to be the end decision,
Yeah.
right? Somebody's not going to eat, and not just somebody. Many people. So, that's same with organic. We can't produce enough food that's all organic. We just can't. So that's the decision. I prefer to eat,
Right.
so I will take the GMOs.
Right. Although the public has concern about several issues, such as GMOs, chemical versus organic, or any synthetic food, none of them causes any reported case of human fatality. Apparently, foodborne illness from negative microbes is a major threat for a food safety issue.
The thing that causes the biggest problem, the thing that people die from when they're consuming food, is microbial contamination. E. coli, listeria, all of these kinds of microbial contaminants That's what kills people. It kills hundreds, thousands of people a year in the United States. To the best of my knowledge, there isn't a single example of someone who has been killed, even harmed, as a result of eating, consuming something that's a GMO product.
So, where do these illness-causing microbes come from? Well, sometimes it's really hard to tell, since it can come from any steps from soil and water from a planting area to contaminated water and equipment during processing, packaging, or transportation. More desperately, it is almost impossible for grocery shoppers to detect any contamination from a whole food they buy. So, do you have maybe any ways for consumer basically to easily detect whether their foods are safe to eat, or do you have? It's a really hard question, I know.
Yeah, so no, and I get that question a lot. So people say, can I look at it and tell if there's human pathogenic bacteria there? And the answer is no, right? They're microscopic, you're not going to be able to see it.
The best thing we can do is to avoid these negative microbes entering to our body. Washing and sanitation are one of the most common practices to get rid of microbes from fresh produces. Cooking can kill the microbes through heating at high temperature. For persons with weak immunity, like the ones who just recovered from surgery or grief illness, the experts does not recommend to consume fresh whole food, but instead eat the processed one like frozen or canned food to avoid foodborne microbes.
Some of what I do is trainings on how do you handle fresh produce at home. So we tell people, get it cool as quickly as possible, because refrigeration temperatures, most bacteria, they don't grow very well at refrigeration temperatures, so you keep that number down. And then just make sure to wash it and scrub it with a clean produce brush. But it's, cooked. That's what I always tell people too.
Yeah.
If you're immunocompromised, if you're sick, fresh produce might not be the best option. So there's nothing wrong with cooked, frozen, cooked, canned produce in those situations.
Overall, the take-home message is that microorganisms are abundantly found surrounding us, and you should not be over-panicked about them. Mostly, they are either beneficial or neutral for us. We just need to be mindful of the enemy ones. Knowledge and research from science can help us figure out how to utilize good microbes and prevent ourselves from bad microbes.
That's what our job,
Yeah.
part of my job in extension is that. So why does this matter to you? And really a lot of the stuff we work on is trying to understand how the bacteria get there in the harmful bacteria. How do they get there in the first place? So looking at routes of contamination. We also do a lot looking at good agricultural practices. So what is the best way on your farm to produce fresh fruits and vegetables to make sure they don't make people sick? But that is exactly what my job is. Is to make sure people understand why it matters to them and how it can impact their life. So hopefully I continue to plug away doing that, but
At least start from small unit like Indiana and then grow more.
Exactly. And we work, so I work with growers all over the state of Indiana and some in surrounding states. But yeah, it's just promoting good agricultural practices and how to just do the best with what you have and how to minimize contamination. That's the main take-home message, I think.
Also, it is not just only for the food science perspective.
You want to look at it from a utilitarian point of view. Again, these are the organisms from which we do our drug discovery, for the most part. These are organisms that have been shown to have a capacity to break down all sorts of secondary compounds or primary compounds. So some of these have been shown to be able to break down human-made waste like plastics, hydrocarbons, oil spills, so they have lots of utility there.
The podcast What Lives Inside Your Food is a part of Science Communication Project in the course YDAE 591, Communicating Science to the Public, in summer 2017 semester. Special thanks all interviewees in the podcast, Dr. Peter Goldsberg and Dr. Kathy Ain from Department of Botany and Plant Pathology, and Dr. Amanda Deering from Department of Food Science, Purdue University. The soundtrack in the podcast is from the song คนกลางๆ by Sunita Litikun. Script, narrative, and production by Teeratas Kijpornyongpan, PhD candidate from Department of Botany and Plant Pathology, Purdue University. Thank you very much for listening.
ไม่ใช่คนที่ดีทุกอย่างเธอจะมีสาย